Welcome back to Take Two, presented by LeftRightPolitics.com, a discussion of the times and current events. I'm your host, Richard Nelson, and I'm joined as always by Adam Matlack and Mike Pomerantz. In light of everything USPS in the media, how are you guys feeling about the Postal Service these days?
Well, it's super interesting. Here we are in 2020, and I am seeing clips of TikTokers telling people to go buy stamps to save the post office. And I gotta tell you, I love it. I love it. I love when people take stances, regardless of how idiotic they are, regardless of how silly they may seem. I love when people, young kids, think, hey man, you know what? We can do stuff together. We can change the narrative together. And I'm okay with people being, hey, if you want the post office, you can make it profitable. You can go fund it and be like, hey, I'm loving this mail thing, and we're gonna go and I love volunteerism. And so anytime anybody is like those types of models, those types of movements, I can always get behind because it's people exercising their right to sit there and say, I love this, I want to support it, we should all join together and save it, whatever, yada yada yada. And so it's interesting that here we are in 2020 and we're talking about trying to save the post office. I mean, look, as somebody who's sat here and I've had arguments with people about how you should just privatize the thing. You should just let it be what it is, right? Just let it be a thing. I don't care about the last mile. If it's needed, it will get figured out. And some of these arguments are people say, oh well, the government got involved in the pension planning, and before that, it wasn't involved in the funding of the post office prior to that, and the post office didn't need government funding before that. That's an argument to me that it could be private, though. That goes both. That cuts both ways. As the government messed it up, and it didn't need funding from the government then, if they got out of it, it would not be messed up. So from these side of things, you sit there and be like, the biggest question though, is it under attack? And I mean, I'm probably half and half. I mean, I think there's probably a likelihood that the Postmaster General, this new guy, is just trying to shake things up. I mean, when you're a new person in any position, I mean, he's the post office. It's not like he can do anything of meaning other than probably execute a money saving plan and become somebody who, it's not like somebody, oh, I was the Postmaster General, now I get to be a 5-star general. That's not how it works. It's a very unthankful job. And so he might just be trying to get his name out there. He might be trying to disrupt the election. Look, as far as I'm concerned, though, the post office doesn't need any help from up top to mess up the mail. Okay, they mess up the mail all the time. I literally just weeks ago we had a whole ordeal with USPS, and it was a disaster. It was a disaster to the point where they've lost a $400 package, and they are in the middle of trying to convince us that we need to try to go track it down to our neighbors. And to the point where I am no longer going to order direct from companies that ship USPS to my home. This was before this mess started. I am now only going to order things. I tried to save $30. And I didn't order from Amazon, and instead I ordered from directly from the supplier. And it was a disaster. It's been a disaster, all because USPS put the package on another person's stoop and told us that they put it on the package, and then they sent it the thing, and it's like, oh, you need to tell them, you need to go tell them, you need to tell us, you need this thing, and it's a disaster. They're not prepared to actually deal with mistakes. When they deliver the mail correctly, it's fine. Meanwhile, I get somebody else's mail at least once a week, no doubt about it. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm not concerned about the post office. In retrospect, I don't think I should be. I don't know if you should be, but if you are, I mean, credit to you, right?
I want to address two things you mentioned. First is, if veterans medication is routinely not being delivered in a timely manner, even if it's just for a few people, do you think that is a story that would have been suppressed by mainstream media so that despite the outcry that a number of people who served this country and were willing to make the ultimate sacrifice for patriotism were denied their medication as a result of this service, that you said even before whatever has been going on, which it's a little mysterious, but even before that was messed up. Do you think we would have heard about that, or do you think that there would have been some sort of media conspiracy or inadvertence or whatever? Like I feel like that story would have come to the top if there was such a huge problem with the post office. But maybe, I don't know, maybe there would be a reason that that story would be suppressed. I don't know.
I don't think it would be. I'll just answer real quick. I don't think it would have been suppressed. I think it just would have been not, without the national outcry of the fear of the election. That's not making the news. It's just not, like, especially if it's a small segment. Like, they ask, they call the thing, be like, oh well, they bureaucratic incompetence or whatever they say, and be like, okay. And I don't think the media is geared towards solving small problems like that.
I mean, I will tell you, as a plaintiff's lawyer, if I knew that I had a case against the Postal Service, which as a government entity has some immunity, but I had that case on behalf of a veteran, I would be going all Michael Avenatti on that nonsense, because that would be a case where I could make serious bones. And the fact that nobody picked that up, that nobody got into it, those greedy shark plaintiffs lawyers never said a word about it, makes me think that maybe it didn't happen. And as inconvenienced as you may have been as a result of this package that you decided to get right from the distributor, I don't know that there was such a systemic problem with the post office. Now, the second thing is much more important, and that is the pension plans. And unfortunately, let me check. Yeah, the time machine is still not working the way I wanted it to. So whether or not it was a mistake for the government to try to, intervene in order to guarantee that 75 years worth of pensions would be paid no matter what, you can't go back and undo that. And I just wonder, is there, privatization? I mean, I guess this is a third thing, but last mile is really important, isn't it? I mean, the idea, just in case people don't know what we're talking about, is that if you have privatized mail delivery, when it's subject to the vagaries of economic, supply and demand, there is little or no demand on that last mile for rural customers. When there's no demand, that means the price is whatever they want. I mean, it's maybe I'm not using the words the right way. The demand is high for the one person who needs it, but they don't have 100 people who need it. Therefore, you got one person who needs it. You charge what you would have charged if you had 100 people. So the one person has to pay for all the other people, and that is not acceptable. So, it would have to be a very regulated privatization, like we do with water here in New Jersey. People say we have privatized water in New Jersey. I mean, it's just a private company that does exactly what a public utility would do. They have the same immunities that a public utility would have. They're regulated out the wazoo, but it's a private company, so I guess it's privatized. Anyway, what do you think is the answer on those pension obligations that have already been promised? And it's not just the Postal Service, it's countless industries where public employees, where because of a decision made in the 70s, we're looking at a total catastrophe in the 2010s, the 2030s, 2020s, 2030s. So how do you unring that bell?
Well, the first part, well, I'll answer that part now. I mean, you can't, other than change the rules. So I've always said about Social Security, that's what they'll do. They'll just change the rules. They'll just keep making it till it's older, keep kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul, and they'll just extend it out to where, 55 years from now, no one gets it. I mean, it's just how it will. Or they'll change the rules where they have to fund it drastically or something like that. But the reality is, it's never going to be balanced, and it's never going to be correct. It'll just be a monster of just it's a mess. Private accounts back in the day, there was many of us who were all for private accounts. Private accounts would fix Social Security. I was part of one of those groups. One of the few things I supported back in the 90s. And of course, that's laughable. There's no way you would ever get private accounts in Social Security because you need to rob your money to give it to these other people. And that's how they view it. So it's a single payer system that will collapse on itself. But going back to some of the last mile stuff, just real quick. I mean, first of all, mail doesn't need to be delivered 6 days a week. I don't know if everybody figured this out yet or not, but it doesn't need to be delivered 6 days a week. Okay. There's a lot of things that when you load balance correctly, you can actually make it affordable. And meaning that not everyone, there's 12 people who live in this town out here. They only get 4 letters a day or something like this. So instead of delivering the mail to this 12 people out here every day, you deliver it to them every week, once a week. And then that ball batches up, you send it out, and it becomes far more economical to do so. So load balancing is an important thing that makes sense in every sector and all these other things, especially from a logistics standpoint. People do not understand how amazing the logistics of this country and the world now are. It is incredibly impressive. The ability to have, there's a company here at HEB that it's free delivery for your groceries if you schedule it. And the reason why they're able to do that is because they can margin you a little bit, but then they can load balance your delivery, meaning that they can make sure that they're going right next to you and it's already in the route, and they can make sure the route is economical for that driver and make sure that they have, all these things set up, and then they take it out. Load balancing is everything when it comes to logistics, especially the last mile. Look, there is no way, unless the military is running the post office, that it's going to be efficient. Okay. And even if the military is going to do it, then, the postal trucks will cost, $4.4 million, and they'll be, funded from Lockheed. So even if that's done, it's probably still not going to be economical. Yesterday, I saw not one, two USPS trucks on my same street. Okay. And people would sit there and say, well, that's not for the environment. That's not true, because they might have come from they almost certainly came from a different launching point, and they just happened across, and they'd be like, hey, I had on this, and they actually save money. Most people, it's the same thing with the box stuff. They get boxes and they're like, oh, I have a pin, and it's got a huge box and it's got all this stuff, air packaging in it. They think, oh, this is a waste. Actually, what's happening is that their computers and algorithms are telling them how big that box should be so that it fits perfectly and measures the whole thing out. That's how advanced it all is. They're planning all that because they're not trying to waste money, and it's this giant economy of scale. So my argument in all of that is that look, the private sector has a lot of innovation when it comes to, and USPS has helped in some of that stuff. They're not retarded. They're not just morons over there. They've done some things that have helped UPS and FedEx. They've thought of stuff that makes sense. They've thought of stuff that doesn't make sense. The biggest problem I have with all of it is the idea that there's no plan. This is all totally surrounding the voting. This is all about voting, securing the elections, all this stuff. Look, it was a vector of attack before. I've talked about that at length, and it's still a vector of attack. And when you have less of a plan going into it, I am not okay. I want, Mike, you have constantly said, you said something, one of the most important things about America is the fact that it's the equal balance or passover of power. That when power happens, it comes, and we happily give it over. I don't think Trump's going to try to, seize the White House like all these people are saying he's going to, even with some of the dumb rhetoric that he's saying. However, what is getting people riled up so much is because of the fact that There is no plan. And Congress hasn't helped with that at all because that's what they do. They don't help anything. They don't legislate anything. They just pontificate up there. And, meanwhile, they're getting paid just fine. So it's frustrating beyond belief in so many ways. But I just say this: if you are one of those TikTokers, and if you happen to want to have the support of the local post office, you should buy as many stamps as possible. And I'll tell you why. There's an economic reason why. I don't believe that those stamps will ever not be usable. If you buy a forever stamp today, I guarantee you one thing: if the government stays in business, those stamps are going to be a lot more expensive 20 years from now. So you can invest a little bit of a nest egg now, help your cause now, save the post office, and save yourself some money while you're at it.
It sounds like a good plan. I'm in favor.
All right, that's all the time we have. Thank you both for your thoughts today. If you enjoyed our discussion, be sure to like and subscribe below, and we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Thanks again. We hope you join us for the next edition of Take Two, presented by LeftRightPolitics.com.